about Shivaji Maharaj, whether was a secular or dharmic. Second, the concept of Rajarshi. And third, political necessity. And the fourth is the foundation for all this is the Shastras, Dharma Shastras. We know that whenever there is a decline in Dharma, yada yada is yada hi dharmasya glani. Whenever there is glani in Dharma, and Dharma glani primarily happens in two foundational principles. Rest, everything can be handled, right? Corruption, laziness, all these things can be handled. But the foundational principle of dharma being disturbed is in connection to knowledge and in connection to protection. So therefore, whenever there is a decline, when we are lost in knowledge, the Lord either directly or through his representative brings forth the knowledge bank, the revival of the knowledge bank. Similarly, whenever there is a greater difficulty of governance, arajakata means without the governance, then what does he do? He appears in a different time zone and comes to vanquish the wrongdoers and establish the governance. So therefore, even the great kings who are dharmic in nature, they are also empowered by the same principle only. It is not a marketed reality, it is not branded reality, it's a reality of the entire legacy of Sanatana Dharma. So there was such a king, if you understand carefully, that Shivaji Maharaj, when he appeared in this world, there was a challenging time for Sanatana Dharma people, practitioners. They did not have their own kingdom. They are working with the people whose faith, whose loyalty, and whose understanding was not friendly to this land. So therefore, you can imagine when something is so unfriendly to this land and the citizens were oppressed from every front, from the political front, from the religious front, from the social front also, from every front they were oppressed. And to such an extent that Jahangir, one of the Mughal king, right, in one of the place near Banaras, I think, there was this huge banyan tree. They broke down the banyan tree and they placed the lid on it so that the tree does not grow. Symbolically wanted to tell that the banyan tree of Dharma is destroyed, never to again sprout. This is not spoken by any Maratha historians. This is spoken by one of the greatest historians called a Jaduna Sarkar. So imagine a young lad who was inspired by his mother before his birth only. She invoked, one of the best Garbha Samskaras could ever happen. It is easier to ask for a nice child. It is easier to ask for a child who is very submissive to parents. It's easier to ask for a child who can do little good to here and there for people. So that be good, do good. But to ask for a child who can stand against the atrocity, who can stand against the misrule, who can take weapons and fight the cause of Dharma, that means you are asking your child to be so risk taker at the cost of losing his life losing your family lives, losing those who are very closely connected to you. So she taught first principle that if you want to do something wonderful, you should be willing to risk everything what you have. A mediocre life has little to risk, and therefore it is very ordinary, little gain. So she was willing to take that risk, and she performed all kinds of tapasyas to invoke that spirit of valor in him. And therefore, when he came to this world, he was so fired up, so ambitious to do something tangible, right? As young as 8 years old. Now, in the area of Mawad is the place you experience the sun setting. Sun is setting there. In that sun setting area, Mawad, he wanted to see the sun rises. The sun will rise for Sanatan Dharma. And therefore, his understanding was very clear. It was not a secular kingdom. Nowadays, even so-called the followers of Shivaji Maharaj, there are two classes, right? There are few classes, not one or two classes. There are few classes. And one of the class would say, no, Shivaji Maharaj is very secular. Everybody was there in his kingdom. Everybody was functioning nicely with him. Everybody was functioning nicely. That is correct. But founded on what principle? It was founded on the principle of equality, which is rooted in the scripture and not appeasement. The problem with secularism is it is foundationally anti-family, some or other. The secular is anti-rashtra. The secularism is anti-dharma. And secularism is consciously or unconsciously, in fact, systematically appeasing certain class of people at the cost of others. So therefore, putting the same ideology on Shivaji Maharaj and calling him as a secular does not make any sense, because in his kingdom there were Ashta Mantris, Ashta Pradhan. And the Ashta Pradhan, one of the minister in his kingdom was the minister connected to Shastras and Dharma. Now, this is also written by the scholars. There was this Portuguese people, if you study the Inquisition of Portuguese Christianity, it could happen now also. Lavanya girl, she had to commit suicide because she was forced to commit suicide. Imagine where people are more aware, people are more conscious. There is not a so-called secular government, more Hindu-friendly government is there. Even in that condition, there was a blatant, which continues to happen, where forced conversion. What Shivaji Maharaj did, it's a recorded history. He saw certain Christian priests were forcing the simpleton Hindus to convert to Christianity. They were captured alive. They were brought. That means the Raja directly interfered into the affairs of these activities. He did not play a secular card. There is a story he protecting church also when he went to Surat. But here, when they were obsessive, arrogant, violent, he also had the power to take stand. That is what Dharma. Dharma is not party-centric. Dharma is not region-centric. Dharma is not religion-centric. Dharma is not even faith-centric. Faith is there. Rituals are there. Region is there. Your jati is there. But jati does not take the forefront position. The foundation is dharma. जहां कहीं धर्म की ग्लानि होगी वहां राजा खड़े होंगे. So he warned them. He told them, since you are converting people where they don't have any connection with what you're talking about, what has to do with Christianity with people who are born and raised in this soil, in this land? From the cultural perspective, from the habit perspective, being worshipper of nature, and you are basically do not accept God in nature. So therefore now I want to give you the same medicine or bitter poison which you are giving it to others. I ask you to convert to Hinduism. Since you are giving everybody, convert to Hinduism. He was not interested in conversion. He was interested in teaching lesson to them. Please understand. And unfortunately, for a radical crusaders, death is preferable than living, which is another principle Shivaji Maharaj did not agree. मत के लिए मरना एक कोई महानता नहीं है. People dying for the opinion is not a great deal. One should live for the opinion. One should experience the mata. One should internalize the mata and feel the connection. It's an internal journey. And because they did not listen, they were given death penalty. Imagine Shivaji Maharaj was here now, and if he had given death penalty to those who tried to convert and he committed suicide, what would they call him? Therefore, the concept of secularism is anti Shivaji Maharaj. Is purely dharmic, and in his dharma, you could practice your faith, but you never hear during the time of Shivaji Maharaj there was a communal conflict. A communal conflict happens only because you pamper people. The purpose of a mantri is to see that people are practicing their religion in such a way they are loyal to their own religion, but they do not impose, oppose, and try to superimpose their faith on others. Right? If it was a hijab case, the so-called Maharashtra politicians who are supporting, they're consciously, unconsciously going against the principle of Shivaji Maharaj. In a public place where the school makes the rule, you follow that rule, as simple as that. Right? So that is the first thing. And second, the word Rajarshi. Right? Jadunath Sarkar, in his book, I referred his book and other books also, he talks about his character. What is the character? The foundational character of dharma is transparency, morality, enterprising, ability to unite people beyond caste, religion, not telling them to give up their caste. Jati, not caste, jati. Right? The modern secular, they want to destroy all kinds of diversity. They want to create an artificial uniformity. Visheshata and Samanyata, there's two principles in the scripture. What is Visheshata? A Visheshata means I am part of a village. That is Samanyata. मैं मावल का एक व्यक्ति हूँ, मावल का हूँ, मैं सामान्य हूँ. But within Mawal, I am a lohar who makes nice weapon. My speciality does not destroy my commonness. and my commonness does not destroy my speciality. Bheda and abheda, right? One of the greatest tragedy of the modernity is they talk about equality. When they talk about equality, they destroy the special flavor which is there amongst every living entity. We follow Varna Dharma, but not the obsessive caste system. How it came, who started it, let us not discuss about this. Varna Dharma is not an abusive word. Varna gives you your special identity, which is cooperative with your commonness to other people. One of the one of the stupidest idea people talk about, oh, the concept of temple was conceived by the Brahmanas. ताकि उनको दान चाहिए था, उनको पैसा चाहिए था, they needed money, therefore they conceived the temple. And the temple building would take 20 to 25 years. And building temple require, people who deal with stone. So they get job for 20 years. And they go to build a new temple, hundreds of people would work. There are more people required to build the temple than to manage the temple. Who are they? From the perspective of the modernity, वो तो शूद्र थे, उनके साथ ऑपरेस किया गया नहीं, वो मंदिर बनाते थे. Building the temple, carving the deities, then you need tailors, right? Originally, जो कपड़े सिलाने वाले होते थे, most general people would not wear stitch clothes. The concept of stitch clothes is very modern once the machine came. Imagine stitching with your hand would take long time. Therefore, only the royalty, only the deities, and ordinary people would not even women would not wear blouse. They would have a lot of clothes. Men would not wear kurta, would not wear pant, even pajama. It's a dhoti, right? And if you are too cold, then they would have a blanket, all hand woven, right? So the tailors were basically privileged profession working for only privileged class and for the Lord. उनके लिए कितना सारा काम आता था. Garland makers, farmers providing the flowers, and one aspect of the temple was Brahmanas. So how can anybody say temple is conceived by the Brahmanas? And therefore the secular, they want to wipe out everybody, remove Darji, remove Brahmanas, remove everybody else, and remove the temple also. Right? And what does it do? It destroys your special flavor of life, and the commonality makes you a mob without a brain. That was not how Shivaji Maharaj operated. He maintained limitless diversity, and at the same time, he created an amazing uniformity. How did he do that? I think I've discussed this before also. One of the greatest contribution of king like Shivaji Maharaj being relevant to their land. He was as dharmic as the king of Krishna Devaraya, Vijayanagar kingdom. If you go to Hampi, Hampi as a capital, right? Hampi was the capital of Vijayanagar Samraj, and there are so many temples, there are so many buildings, there are so much of construction. वो छोटे से गांव में, near Hospet, if you go Hampi, there are so much of construction. As against that, if you go to Raigad, or you go to Raigad also, what do you see there? You do not see a lot of construction. You do not see many temples. You do not see the Queen's bathing place. You see fort, you see water body, right? You see a system which is beneficial to the local people, which is connected to farming. Farming requires water. So the secular may say, just see the Vijayanagar kingdom is all about show off. And Shivaji proves that he was a secular because he did not build the temples. But that is a stupid logic. And Jadunath Sarkar explains this very nicely, that you build a temple if you have a resources. In one of the purports in the Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada explains, if you're a wealthy man, then you bring the deities. Bringing deity is not a law. Bringing deities is an inspiration. At the same time, it is caused by a lot of resources with you. अगर आप अपने घर में मूर्ति लेकर आते हो, विग्रह लेकर आते हो, और आपके घर में लोगों को खाने के लिए नहीं हो, then that does not show with a proper understanding. So what happened in Maharashtra? In Maharashtra, Shivaji Maharaj fired the inspiration through Ramdas Swami, through Tukaram Maharaj, and other Maharashtrian saintly people of experiencing God in his holy name. Because the landscape was very challenging to be prosperous. The mountainous area did not provide 2 to 3 crops in a year. And because it is the mountainous area, the traffic of business people going from one area to another area was not possible. There was no this route, going to Bangalore, now how Bombay, from Bombay, all the buses, train, when they go to south, the Pune Express, the Solapur Express, they go through that. The huge transportation happens. But in those times, it was not like that. Even the warriors in Shivaji Maharaj army were part-time farmers and part-time warriors. They were not full-time soldiers. We have to understand this. So adapting to the local system and not making them bereft of spirituality by providing what they could easily practice. Establishing temple in everybody's heart, not necessarily building a physical temple because the resources were not sufficient. That does not make him a secular against the Vijayanagar kingdom. That does not make him less a dharmic than the Vijayanagar kingdom. It makes him as much as a dharmic kingdom, as much as the Vijayanagar people. The difference is they were operating on a different place and Shivaji Maharaj was operating a different place. Another interesting principle, what is Rajarshi? Rajarshi is the principle of Raja and Rishi. How can he be secular? Because most of the politicians in the present state, whether it is Maharashtra, whether it is other place, they openly say that we don't believe in God. Right? They ridicule certain aspect of the scripture, even sometimes claiming to be I'm a Hindu. Or they become Hindu during the political rally without having any faith. In the Mahabharata, there is a story which Kanika told Duryodhan. He said, you know what, you should not believe in anything. You should only believe about your own selfishness. अपने स्वार्थ के लिए आपको अगर अपने बाप को भी मारना पड़े, अपने भाइयों को भी मारना पड़े, अपने परिवार को भी मारना पड़े, उसके लिए आपको you should not feel discouraged, you should not feel hesitant. And after killing them, you should cry also. And for that, if you need to go to the temple, you go, but don't believe. Kanika says this. Right? Kanika says this. So how can such people who steal, who can make money out of the donation which comes to the temple? Right? Imagine they can loot hundreds of crores of rupees without any feeling. Why? Because they are simply as the Bhagavatam explains in the 10th canto, the Rakshasas are moving disguised as governors. But Shivaji Maharaj is not like that. He was a Rajarshi. Rajarshi means even after bringing that wealth from Surat, when he wanted to take something for his wife, he's also a husband, he's also king. राजा को अपना पर्सनल भी वेल्थ हुआ करता था. The wealth of the kingdom is not synonymous to the wealth of the king. Please understand this. They are two different things. The wealth of the kingdom is not synonymous to the wealth of the king. The king would also buy a jewelry which he wanted for his wife. That is explained, that is recorded. Other day I was doing a program with one college, and the fellow speaker, he mentioned one interesting story. In his time, when he had already 1670, where he was already a king, having 300,000 soldiers at disposal, there was one village where the village patil left his body. And the patil ki, it was a post that was empty, and the wife couldn't take it, and the children were too young to handle it. So therefore the patil ki was sold. So Shivaji Maharaj got to know about this. Then he took part in that auction, and he bought that patil ki for 20 hun. And within 6 months he sold it for 100 hun. That means he knew the art of entrepreneurship also, buying and selling. Profit, क्योंकि युद्ध से आप अपने समृद्धि को नहीं बढ़ा सकते हो. The purpose of war is to stop the invasion of the enemies. The purpose of war is not prosperity, please. War does not bring prosperity. The minimum good thing war can do is that war stops invaders attacking your country. It does not bring prosperity. Prosperity can only be caused by entrepreneurship, business, right? So therefore, he started trading with the communities beyond India, the Portuguese, Dutch, and everybody, but keeping an eye on them, because their motto was not only the trade, but their motto was also controllership, right? So doing all these things, a Rajarshi has twofold duties: the kingdom and his Atma, right? अपने अध्यात्म के बारे में और अपने राज्य के बारे में. When he's operating in the world, he's the Raja, and is operating in his own world, inner world, he's the Rishi. Therefore, he became Rajarshi. Therefore, the original word Swarajya, the word Swarajya for the Indian freedom movement basically came from Shivaji Maharaj's Swarajya only. And what is that Swarajya? The Swarajya refers to the power to govern your own self. And how do you govern your own self? By practicing Nishkama Karma. And how can you practice Nishkama Karma? You cannot practice Nishkama Karma without Adhyatma. You can only be Rajarshi when you are actually practicing Nishkama Karma. He was not hatti. He was determined but not stubborn. Therefore, he was flexible. And flexibility can only come when you have the principle of Bhagavad Gita. Right? You are not obsessed. Unlike many Kshatriyas, many times Kshatriyas are very stubborn about their decision. They are not flexible. Sometimes the Marathas say, right? Maranarpan Vaknar Nahi. But that principle he did not follow. He was willing to give 23 or 27 forts to the Mughal kingdom. No, typical Maratha spirit is that एक भी नहीं देने का, मरेंगे लेकिन देंगे नहीं. Doesn't work. He was willing to compromise. He was willing to adjust, just like in the Bhagavatam, Lord Vishnu told the Devatas to have a truce with the Rakshasas. You can imagine what is the Aurangzeb compared to Rakshasas. The Rakshasas would eat man. वो मनुष्य का ही भक्षण करते थे. फिर then you have to have a truce with the Rakshasas, not permanently. राक्षसों के साथ मित्रता केवल कुछ एजेंडा के कारण कर सकते हो. किसके लिए? देवताओं के लाभ के लिए. Without that, that will not happen. So one has to understand this principle. So using this, many secular people have said, oh, he has nothing to do with Hinduism. He was nothing to do with Sanatan Dharma. It was all about politics and expanding his kingdom. Why can't Dharmic king also have this object of expanding his kingdom? Can a spiritual practitioner not make money? Can a spiritual practitioner not grow in life? One cannot say, oh, his spirituality was very superficial, but main goal was to grow. There is no harm in growth. And therefore, these ideas must have come to him from the Mahabharata only. Just like Yudhishthira Maharaj, when he wanted that CHHATRAPATI, the great Shaunak Rishi taught him Vairagya. He said, why are you doing like this? You just focus being in the forest. Why you want all this CHHATRAPATI? He said, look, my dear sage, it is not about me. I can live with 2 rotis. But there are people around me, those who have given up their connection to the kingdom of Duryodhana. They have followed me. They are more than 60,000 in number. I need to provide them. ये कोई आसक्ति नहीं है. ये कोई selfishness नहीं है. This is not selfishness. I need to provide them because they have followed me. There is no attachment. So Shaunak Rishi, who was teaching detachment to Yudhishthira Maharaj, realized that Yudhishthira Maharaj is an Anasakta Raja. So therefore, Anasakta Raja can dream of becoming a Chakravarti, because whether he becomes a Chakravarti or is not a Chakravarti, he is not obsessed with that position. There may be a pain for some time that I lost that position, but there is no obsession. And the purpose of becoming a Chakravarti means you can contribute large number of charity to the ordinary people. And therefore, being Rajarshi, Shivaji Maharaj, one of the great thing what we see, wherever you go to Maharashtra, you hardly see anything connected to his residence. Whatever you see is connected to the fort. Now, fort is not synonymous to palace of the king. I don't know how many people have actually gone and seen the fort. It's a worth visiting. Raigad, Rajgad, whenever you go to the next trip, rather than always going to Mahabaleshwar, people should go to Raigad, people should Rajgad, people should go to Shivaneri. It's a Pavitra Sthan. Now, what do you see there? What do you see? The interesting principle. There are 1 or 2 small temples, because on the mountain top, you can't invest your money in building temples, because you're already building the faith in people through the great saintly people going around. The water body, the fort which is built, and hardly you see any home structure. How sad it is for our people to make Taj Mahal as the symbol of sacrifice. It is a selfishness where hundreds and thousands of laborers when you see Taj Mahal, within that Taj Mahal, you have to see millions of laborers were oppressed at the cost of, at the millions laborers were oppressed. And many people economically, it went bankrupt to build something which is famous, but it is full of selfishness. If the the limbs of the skilled worker so that they will not build another Taj Mahal like structure. Is it worth calling it as a wonder? On the other hand, if you go and see the fort, the walls of that fort, they vibrate tyaga, they vibrate reference, they vibrate relevance. What was that relevance? It's an amazing thing to go and see there. He was economically very, very competent, understanding what we have and what to build with this. एक राजर्षि कर सकता है, हाँ, जिसमें ऋषि तुल्य, in his entire battle when he traveled across everywhere, not in the helicopter, always on the horseback. It is not easy. Therefore, whether it is Rana Pratap or Shivaji Maharaj, they did not live more than 60 years. Bajirao Peshwa did not live more than 40 years. He traveled 140,000 kilometers in his 20 years of lifespan. And not these highways, not that there are malls and there are stalls where you can stop and eat. Right? They would carry, they would not even cook because they wanted to run, they wanted to move faster. Therefore, great Shivaji Maharaj departed from this world when he was just 53 years. That is not the life. It's very small life. And therefore, he lived like a Raja for the people, not for himself. Rajashahi is not to show off. Rajashahi is to show to the people I am there to govern. And at the same time being very rishi inside, practicing spirituality. Therefore, he called it that Swarajya, Swarajya, Swatacha Rajya. म्हणजे पहिला स्वतःवर राज्य करा. First, you control your own self so that you can govern others. And he called it as Hindavi Swarajya. Nowadays, people do not chant Go Brahmana Pratipalaka. Right? Now, what is Brahmana? It is not that it is protecting the Brahmana Jati. It is protection of knowledge bank. Right? The seculars, he showed me one secular calling for protection of the cows, respecting the cows as a mother. You don't find them like that. How can you offend Shivaji Maharaj by calling him as a secular? Because he was a dharmic king, knowledge and cows were always protected. That is the Rajarshi. And the third, the political reality. Right? Many times, political reality becomes a dirty word. Oh, politics, I have no interest in politics. It's none of my business. But in their own house, they are doing all kinds of politics. The daughter-in-law is doing politics against the mother-in-law. Mother-in-law is playing a politics against the daughter-in-law. A son is playing politics against the sister. Sister is playing politics against the sister. Two brothers are doing politics. वहां तो सब जगह में जाते हैं, बड़े बद्दर लॉयर, अच्छे लॉयर, जितना भी लॉयर के लिए पैसा देना है उधर जाते हैं. But they will come and tell you, we are not interested in politics. You cannot stay without, you cannot breathe without politics. If you do not have a larger understanding of politics, you will do politics in your own 700 square feet house. And for that small property also, you'll go to the judiciary. You'll bribe the police. ये सब गंदगी कर सकते हो, लेकिन whenever you talk about the larger concept of politics, no, I'm not interested. This is all dirty thing. We don't have nothing to do with politics. The entire Mahabharata, there is a politics. In the Ramayana, there is a politics. In the Bhagavatam, there is a politics. And the Bhagavatam is only spoken to the people who had performed politics. But their politics was Raja Karta, Raja Karya, not dirty politics. Right? And how did Shivaji Maharaj handle? There are so many verses he wrote about not being attached to the fort and working on the inner fort. But he had to do it, right? He had to play that political reality, but keeping that Nishkama Karma Yoga in the center, right? When he, in his entire career, he went to a lot of mohims. People see that Shivaji Maharaj using his sword in his entire career as a warrior, as the king who was in the forefront of the battle. But that does not mean that the soldier who knows how to kill, he takes pleasure in killing people. If you go to the Indian army people, they have a great anger against their enemies. But when the enemy is faced with, their anger is not against the enemy. Their anger is against the ideology of that enemy. Not even the country. वो पाकिस्तान प्रदेश के साथ लड़ते नहीं है, वो चाइनीज लोगों के साथ में लड़ते नहीं है, उनके विचारधाराओं के साथ में लड़ते हैं. Right? If our soldier now also can have such a sensitive consciousness of killing people reluctantly, not taking pleasure in that, the greatest warmongers are not the war army people. The greatest warmongers are the people who are sitting in a bar and discussing about attacking the enemy. It's a true story. The citizens are the greatest warmongers because they have nothing to lose. So how many people Shivaji Maharaj killed in his entire career? Only 4 people. Now for a soldier, for a warrior, to kill only 4 people is very less. Who was always on the back of his horses, always going from one place to another place, fighting so many battles. But केवल 4 लोग को, Afzal Khan, Krishnaji Pant, Jawlis More, and Ghorpade. Only these 4 people. Very interesting. So therefore, one should not say, oh, Shivaji Maharaj must have killed hundreds of people. No, that is not the purpose of a king. Neither he killed others, nor he allowed his own people to be killed. He said, live for a good cause, live for a good cause, live for a good cause. And that also comes from the Mahabharata only. Because Krishna's principle is, don't die for the ideal. You should live for the ideal so that it creates a legacy. Therefore, the political reality, playing all kinds of political shrewdness, became one of the core characters. Therefore, when the question is raised, whether Shivaji Maharaj killed Afzal Khan as a reaction, or is it that he attacked Afzal Khan first? Very clear. Shivaji Maharaj attacked Afzal Khan first. There was a clear strategy. It was not a defense mechanism, it was an attack mechanism. And that Afzal Khan deserved death penalty. So therefore, there is no need to defend saying that no, because he attacked, therefore he attacked. No, the clarity was there कि इसको नीचे लाना ही है. Whether destroying Shahiste Khan or going to Aurangzeb's place in the den of Aurangzeb. Now they have done a lot of research on escape from the Agra fort by Shivaji Maharaj, and up until now there is no conclusiveness in regards to how he must have come. Who was against bribery? There are so many stories where he has punished, but he used bribe as a policy, one of these stories, and he broke the loyalty of Aurangzeb's Sardars and Senapatis. अंदर रह के उनके अनेक नेताओं को पैसे खिलाया, and they created looseness in the fort protection, and Shivaji Maharaj escaped. And Aurangzeb in his entire life never ever could forgive himself for that activity. Okay, and the last one is, we know all this foundation came from the Shastra. You know, he studied Shastra not like a story. एक कथा के रूप में, केवल इंस्पिरेशन के रूप में नहीं, but he was told the story with the purpose of developing his psychology. भगवान रामचंद्र का आदर्श और कृष्ण का व्यवहार. In his character, he inculcated the qualities of Shri Ram. In application, he inculcated the qualities of Krishna. When these two combined things are there for the king, then they create a legacy. And therefore Shivaji Maharaj, did not conclude his kingdom along with his departure. Rather, the legacy continued for few generations up until, I think, the second battle of Anglo-Maratha. Again, the Anglos, the British people, divided within the Marathas. The Peshwas and the Marathas had conflict, and that was the conclusion of Maratha kingdom. That means from his appearance till the 1810 or 1820, I don't know exact dates, it continued. So what was leadership? The leadership proved that it is not that with me everything departs. Without me everything expands. Shivaji Maharaj ruled part of Maharashtra. The Peshwas took the spirit of Shivaji Maharaj beyond the borders of Maharashtra and made the spirit of his dedication to the entire subcontinent. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Any questions or comments?
Thank you very much, Prabhuji. That was quite an insightful understanding of Shivaji Maharaj. What a personality. I mean, he was a politician, an economist, a strategist, a spiritualist, a warrior, all combined in one. It is interesting to really understand that how did he, learn about all these aspects, and how do we teach, the leadership lessons to the generation to follow? Because, when we went to school, we didn't learn so much about Shivaji Maharaj as much as, we get
Mother
to
Teresa.
learn.
Yeah, we learned about Mother Teresa.
Yeah. So how does one transfer this kind of knowledge to the younger generation?
Other than one professor was telling, there are more than 1400 books. I don't know, he was mentioning all over the world about the management strategy, war strategy of Shivaji Maharaj. Right. But compared to that, within Maharashtra also, there are only 4 or 5 books on management. So that shows the apathy by emotional followers or the intellectuals also. Another interesting part is when Shivaji Maharaj is glorified, consciously, unconsciously, nowadays they don't, his foundation is Dharma Shastras. When you separate Shivaji Maharaj from the scripture and make him stand alone, right? That's an insult of his character. Because if he wants to give all the credit, he would give credit to the legacy. It's our responsibility to give credit to him, but he will give credit to the Shastra. So therefore, it is an important principle when you teach Shivaji Maharaj. His foundation has to be taught. While teaching his foundation, while teaching the foundation of Shastra, we have to give references of modern kings also, how they were able to practice this. Right. And therefore, there is a need for change in education system, where people need to study. Even many Maharashtrians who go to English medium school, they have very less understanding of his life. The only thing they know, Shivaji Maharaj statue, or some pavadas, some movies. But deep study, like how you study, you know, the the, the history books which people studied, the Akbar the Great. How can he be great? Recently, that Manoj Muntashar, the writer, he made amazing video about these are invaders, these are looterers, and he proved to so many stories. But Akbar was great, no? No, and Shivaji Maharaj you can call, but you don't call him as great. Apparently, in one sense, the Vijayanagar kingdom was much bigger than Akbar's kingdom. But Akbar becomes the great. So therefore, it has to be systematically taught, if not in the school. It has to be taught by the parents also. Creating a groups, taking them to this kind of forts also. At least we used to do in the school. We're taking them around. And once the COVID is done with, there are groups of people who should go there, see those places. These are all Pavitra Sthan. And that's how we can do it.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Prabhuji. Request Ozaji to please ask his question.
Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranam, Prabhu.
Yes.
Prabhu, I have a question now. As we said that the lack of knowledge we have as a follower of Sanatan Dharma, being a part of born in a Sanatan Dharma family, even I was not aware of the scriptures or shastras because of the education system that we had. Now, due to that, what happens? The young generation or the children within our home, they get attracted to the Western culture, or I would say to the Macloid culture. So, in that case, how do we keep them away from those culture and make them inclined towards our own culture?
Therefore, there has to be clarity in regards to assertively speaking. One should not say, oh, they're also good, we are also good, everything is okay, everything is all right. We should not speak ill about them. It's not about speaking ill about them. It is not about slandering them, but teaching them critical thinking. If you don't teach critical thinking to your children, some children, even while practicing spirituality, they lean towards communistic idea in their mindset. There are so many kids like that, so many college going students also. Why? Because they are bombarded by narratives given by people there.
But not everyone is like what we say. So then it's difficult to make them understand or counter them.
So therefore it's a yagya. It's a non-stop yagya. So therefore it is not only talk. They have to see these places. When you see these places, when you go and see, I have no interest in seeing Taj Mahal. I may bump there, but there is no interest, because when you have a clarity, when you go and see these places, then you realize, oh my God, how they have built, what they have done. Then you realize, wow, what a great sacrifice. So therefore, it is not simply speech. It is a conscious, systematic narratives has to be developed to teach them, which is happening also. Like recently, one historian brought this book on Savarkar, so which is bringing out so many realities, and he has gone through so much of challenges bringing this book, which was hidden from the mainstream. Basically, we can't give up. We have to keep trying, and there is a huge huge change in people's psychology also, which is happening. No?
Also, just last question, Prabhuji. Do we have a book that is written by you or anyone, any of our monks from our temple on Mahabharata? Do we have book?
No, that are coming. You can read Gita Press Gorakhpur book, which is very, very loyal to the original Sanskrit.
Okay. Okay. So they have book called Mahabharata.
Yeah.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you. Very good.
Yeah, thank you very much, Prabhuji. There are many books written by Govinda Das, which has reference to Mahabharata and Ramayana. Yeah, you could check them on Amazon. Yeah, thank you. Can I request Krishna Das Prabhuji to please unmute yourself and ask your question?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes.
The question I have is when I read some different Maharaj or his father Virochana, they are portrayed as very dharmic people, or even their character is, but I'm confused always. They are on the demon side, still able to practice dharma, and they fight with demigods. Somehow this is not, I am not able to sync with this thing. How can somebody said not of dharma?
Otherwise, Bali Maharaj till Lord Vaman, taking everything away from him, the complete transformation did not happen. So he was dharmic to some extent. Not that his dharmikta was total. Virochan, same thing. He was a very spirited person, but still he had certain rakshasa vritti. Therefore, he was the devatas arranged that Virochan should lose something. Like Vritrasur also. He was a great devotee, but he couldn't continue with that body. That body was unfit to practice spirituality. The spirit of spirituality was there, but the process of spirituality was not. So the only spirit is not sufficient. Along with the spirit, you need to have a process also.
Is there anything like dharma of rakshasas, like they are like this, that is their dharma, they do this?
No, most of the rakshasas, you show almost all, not almost all rakshasas. You're talking about particular categories who are extremely, transparent, but still they were punished. Forget them. Bhishma Dev was a great dharmic person, devotee, but he sided with the adharma people. Was he not punished by Krishna?
Yes. So
that is the point. Lord Ramchandra glorified Ravana's character of power, his greatness. So the beauty of Sanatan Dharma, and one of the greatest interesting fact is the Shiva Tandava Stotra is compiled by Ravan. And all the great followers of Lord Shiva sing that song. Because the compilation is very clean. The person who compiled may be very bad. So the punishment was given for his bad behavior, but the compilation is taken. They don't sing it because it's Ravana is compiled. They sing it because it is too good. Okay. So that is the beauty of Sanatan Dharma. So we have no problem in glorifying the greatness of Virochan and Bali Maharaj. But at the same time, they were given punishment for siding adharma and causing conflict in the world. So the Lord separated these two things for the Rakshasas. But with the integrated dharma, you are a Sura, Devata plus Dharmic, and therefore you can contribute from all levels.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji. Can I request Mageshwaran ji to please ask your question?
हरे कृष्णा, दंडोत प्रणाम प्रभु जी। बहुत सुंदर तरीके से आपने हमें एक क्लास दी है, बहुत अच्छा लगा। प्रभु जी मुझे भी डाउट था अभी। चैतन्य महाप्रभु बोलते हैं कि त्रिनाद नीचे ना तरोर अपि सहिष्णु हमानी ना माने देना कीर्तन में सदा। अभी एक पर्सपेक्टिव से हम देखें तो अभी जो भी हो रहा है इंडिया में, अभी फॉर एग्जांपल आप लावण्या का भी बताए थे, शिवाजी महाराज होते तो डायरेक्ट उनको टकमक चौक से ही उनको पनिशमेंट देते थे, लेकिन ऐसा सिचुएशन में भी हमारे साथ हो रहा है। मेरा क्या कर्तव्य रहेगा एज अ सनातन फॉलोवर?
So आपके अपने क्षमता के अनुसार, according to your capacity, you may have the awareness of the national and international situation, but that does not change your capacity. Your understanding does not change your capacity. So your understanding gives rise to understanding your capacity. According to your capacity, you contribute. जैसे रामदास स्वामी ने कहा था, पॉलिटिकल अलर्टनेस, राजकीय सतर्कता, आध्यात्मिक तल्लीनता और सामाजिक संवेदनशीलता. Right? So therefore, Sanatana Dharma is always built on the principle of decentralized inspiration. And therefore, that is its strength. What is its strength? That every person has something to contribute. So how much you do, according to your capacity, doing it is most important. And how does it begin? It begins with awareness. Satarkta. Samadhik Samvedanshilta. At least when people are in their own home, how many families, I would say larger number of Hindus fight among themselves, forget about jati, in their own house, civil suits. They talk about Trinadapi, but they fight with their own brothers and sisters for property. तो अगर ये इधर ही हमारी सारी एनर्जी चली जाती है तो समाज की सेवा कैसी होगी, आध्यात्मिक तल्लीनता कैसे होगा, right? So therefore, and that is another principle how the modern secular world operates. Secular world doesn't allow you to take a stand for dharma cause, but it facilitates your legal problem with your own family. Therefore, the great Nani Palkhiwala said, after the eternality, it is the civil suit in India, which is next to eternality. लड़ते रहे. इसलिए छोटे-छोटे चीजें अपने क्षमता के अनुसार करने से Pandavas had their own limitations, but they did. Sanatana Dharma will never be destroyed. But what is your contribution to protect your own dharma and protect those who are very closely connected to you? जिसकी ज्यादा क्षमता है वो ज्यादा करेगा, जिसकी कम क्षमता है वो जैसे अपने क्षमता के अनुसार करेंगे.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, can we take some more questions?
Two more questions, yeah.
Okay. Prakashji, can you please ask your question?
हरे कृष्णा प्रभु जी, दंडवत प्रणाम. प्रभु जी, आप बोले ना राक्षसों के साथ भी हम दोस्त करना चाहिए जब हमको एजेंडा रहते हैं. So अभी हम how can I believe it राक्षस that character मनुष्य?
I didn't get your question. What you said?
प्रभु जी, आप बोले ना, विष्णु बोलते हैं ना भागवत में, अब हम लोगों का कुछ एजेंडा रहते तो जब राक्षसों को भी दोस्त करना चाहिए बोल, तो that time Vishnu is there. So now how can we believe it Rakshasas?
Are you working? Where do you work?
Prabhuji?
Where do you work? Do you work?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yeah, so there are all class of
Singapore Township, Prabhuji.
Yeah, you have all class of people, no? You have all class of people. There are people with limitation, there are people with agenda, there are people with, not everybody is sitting there and being honest. Sab ek dusre ko, there is a survival of the fittest. So therefore, as much as the good people become fittest, when they become fittest, then they have the power to collect resources more and contribute more resources to the growth of dharma. Dharma does not grow only because we talk. Dharma grows because dharma is powerful. So therefore, if dharma has to become powerful, you have to be in the real world. You have to be in the real world and contribute according to your capacity to grow yourself first. जितना आपके पास बड़ा पोजीशन आएगा उतना आप ज्यादा कंट्रीब्यूट करोगे, जितना आपके पास पोजीशन कम रहेगा उतना आप कम कंट्रीब्यूट करोगे. So if you have the resources to grow, why stop growing? Why stop from growing? Right? When the present prime minister, whether somebody believes, does not believe, at least assertively he was able to talk about if the Ram Mandir had to come. This is the struggle of 500 years old. Right? It's a 500-year-old struggle. Kashi corridor. What does it? It is assertive, and assertive not at the cost of. Never any follower of Sanatana Dharma will never talk about destroying anybody. But they will say, practice your faith and do not trample upon somebody else's faith. So when you make a rule for that, that is not being fanatical, right? How the modern this thing people say. So somebody is standing, fighting, doing something good, right? So therefore, so they may make mistake in governance also, but the foundational principle of their governance is always to see that there should be a financial growth, there should be a cultural growth, there should be a spiritual growth. So that is the principle. And how do you know that Lord Vishnu is there? Why we need Lord Vishnu for us to do everything? Vishnu has given right knowledge. Vishnu has given right people around us. Vishnu has given our own ability. In the Gita, Krishna says, I am the ability in the man. The very ability is nothing but synonymous to God only. Right? So therefore, the principle is simple, that a person's good people should also have to be smart. In this world, being too good means you'll become eventually poverty stricken, because the good people will be stripped off by the bad people and they don't care. They will come and ask you also, can you sell your house because I need to pay loan for my car, and you will give also. Oh, let him enjoy his car. It's okay. I can stay in a rented property. And actually people do like this, some crazy good people to such an extent. So that is not the policy of Krishna. That is not the policy of Lord Ram. That is not the policy of Shivaji Maharaj. That is not the policy of Krishna Deva Raya. You have to battle for the right reason. You have to adjust with the wrong people, but not becoming a wrong people. So that the principle is simple. Grow and contribute. Become resourceful and direct the resources to those who are underprivileged, who need dharma and resources to grow also. That's a simple principle of Gita. Swadharma and Lokasadharma.
Thank you, Prabhuji. We have a question by Shwetadeep Prabhuji. I think, he has lowered his hand.
I want to take this question. Somebody said, I have a doubt why the saints like Rup Goswami, Tukaram, etc. never say anything about politics like ancient rishis, Parashar, Bharadwaj. Why only take their example? Why not integrate? How much do you follow Rup Goswami and Tukaram Maharaj? When you don't want to take action, you gave the example of, I'm not saying you means you. I'm just giving an example. When you don't want to take action, you take the example of Rupa and Sanatana Goswami. When you want to fight in the court against your neighbor and your brother, then where does that spirit come, which is not connected to Rupa and Sanatana Goswami? Rupa and Sanatana Goswami focused on pure idealistic lifestyle, which is practiced by people living in Vrindavan or having the spirit of Vrindavan, actually minimizing all their needs. Right? You want to live in New York and talk about Rupa Goswami, that is the height of hypocrisy. You want to go to Vrindavan, live in a MIT building and say, this is nothing to do. To build that building, you need money. right? So therefore, when you talk about Rupa Goswami, that means you are cancelling Krishna's teaching from the Bhagavad Gita. Why are we distributing Bhagavad Gita then? Why not only Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu? So Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu has its place to experience pure devotion in your heart. But you cannot live a life of Rupa Goswami even in Vrindavan for half an hour. You have a sweater, you have a warm clothes coming from, some branded sweater, right? So therefore, there should not be a contradiction in our understanding of what is Rupa Goswami's contribution to us, his literature for us to experience Brajaras. But at the same time, you are part of this world, whether you are in Vrindavan or elsewhere, the management comes. So we are talking about dharmic management without contradicting the pure devotional service presented by all these great saintly people. Ramdas Swami is not against the teaching of Tukaram Maharaj, and Tukaram Maharaj is not against Ramdas Swami. You can't say I will only follow Ramdas Swami because he makes sense. I will only follow Tukaram Maharaj, he only makes sense to me. I'll only follow Rupa Goswami, I don't want to talk about anything else. That is not being matured, that is being escapist. That means you want Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, then you don't want Bhagavad Gita. That will not work. No?
Thank you very much, Prabhuji. That's a good integration of Vraj and Kurukshetra, which is true life. Prabhuji, Shweti Prabhuji has, has requested to ask a question. Can we take that as a last question?
Yeah. Hare Krishna.
गोविंद प्रभु, हरे कृष्णा, दंडवत.
नमस्कार, हरे कृष्णा.
हाँ, काफी अच्छा था. बेसिकली कि धर्म जो है वो रिलीजन सेंट्रिक या रीजन सेंट्रिक नहीं है, तो फेथ सेंट्रिक है. तो काफी अच्छा इंफॉर्मेशन था. थोड़ा बात कभी कभी ऐसा लगता है कि जब भी राजा होना है, या छत्रपति शिवाजी महाराज या जो भी राजा है, तो महाराज बनने के लिए तो रजगुण लगता है, या रजगुण से है तभी तो क्रिएटिविटी आती है या क्रियाशीलता आता है. लेकिन जब हम ये प्रैक्टिस स्पिरिचुअलिटी करते हैं, तब ये सत्वगुण की तरफ ऐसा लगता है कि हम ज्यादा जाते हैं. और तब पता चलता है कि ये समाज में कई चीजें होती है, वो देख के अनदेखा करते हैं, और समझता है कि ये सब गलत है, कुछ कंट्रीब्यूट करना चाहिए इसमें. तो ये स्पिरिचुअल प्रैक्टिस के वजह से हम टुवर्ड्स सत्व गुण के तरफ जाते हैं और इधर अनदेखा करते हैं. लेकिन यहाँ छत्रपति शिवाजी महाराज का जीवन देखा तो ऐसा दिखता है कि वो सत्वगुण अपने साधना के लिए यूज करते थे, लेकिन समाज के लिए वो रजोगुण का यूज करते थे. तो इसको कैसा लेना चाहिए? ये गुण का जो थ्योरी है वो इंटीग्रेशन है. लोग बोलते हैं सत्वगुण होना चाहिए, शुद्ध सत्व में जाना चाहिए, तीनों गुण बुरे हैं, तो वो थोड़ा सा कंफ्यूजन होता है.
ये अगर आप इसमें कोई कंफ्यूजन नहीं है. तीनों गुण हम सत्व यानी कि उसको फाउंडेशन बनाकर, वी मेक सत्व एज अवर फाउंडेशन थ्रू साधना. देयरफॉर इसीलिए मैंने कहा राजर्षि राजा यानी कि रजोगुण की आवश्यकता, ऋषि यानी कि सत्वगुण की आवश्यकता. आपको एक गार्लैंड बनाने के लिए भी रजोगुण की आवश्यकता. क्रिया यानी कि रजोगुण,
राइट.
सत्व में क्रिया नहीं होती है, क्रिया सत्व में संतुष्टि होती है, और संतुष्ट से सृष्टि का निर्माण नहीं होता. इन मनी एंड महाभारत ये लक्ष्मी जी रुक्मिणी को कहती है, जो संतुष्ट है उनसे मैं दूर चली जाती हूँ. ये लक्ष्मी जी का वचन है. Those who are satisfied, I do not stay with them. So the question is, should I not be satisfied? You should be satisfied when you become tired of your contribution, when you are 60, 70-year-old, कि आपके शरीर काम नहीं कर रहे हैं, तभी आप प्योरली घर पे बैठकर किसी में हस्तक्षेप न करते हुए, किसी में नाक न अड़ाते हुए. Again, there are hundreds of stories, whether spiritual or non-spiritualist. एक मदर इन लॉ अपने घर की चाबी को नहीं दे सकते डॉटर इन लॉ को, और बात करते सत्व गुण की. तो इसीलिए अगर नियंत्रण करने की इच्छा है तो नियंत्रण के साथ में संघर्ष भी करना पड़ता है। जो संघर्ष करके नियंत्रण करता ना, वो कभी ना कभी थक जाता है, और वही थकावट अगर उसको ज्ञान हो, वो थकावट उसको अनासक्त बना देता है। नाउ आई हैंड ओवर दिस टू माय नेक्स्ट जनरेशन, राइट। अगर किसी ने ऐसा किया ही नहीं है, केवल फिलॉसफी बोल रहे हैं, दे आर टॉकिंग अबाउट द फिलॉसफी बट दे आर नॉट एबल टू प्रैक्टिस, क्योंकि रजोगुण का सही प्रकार से उपयोग नहीं किया। इसलिए रजो तमो और सत्व का एक सुंदर इंटीग्रेशन होता है। सोने के लिए तमोगुण की आवश्यकता है, नहीं तो नींद नहीं आएगी, तो फिर आपको दवाई लेना पड़ेगा। अगर आप होम्योपैथिक मेडिसिन लोगे, वो फर्मेंटेड होता है, उसमें अल्कोहल का कुछ परसेंटेज होता है। अब बोलेगे नहीं, आई विल नॉट टेक एलोपैथिक, आई विल नॉट टेक होम्योपैथिक, मैं आयुर्वेद लूंगा। आयुर्वेद नहीं, फर्मेंटेशन का ही मेडिसिन आपको लेना पड़ेगा। द्राक्षसव लेना हो या फिर और दूसरा कुछ लेना हो, आपको कुछ तेल लगाना हो, जायफल लेना हो, उसमें रजोगुण है। तो हाउ कैन, तो उसमें तमोगुण है। तो इसलिए जब तक सुस्त नहीं होगा आदमी मेंटली और फिजिकली, उसको नींद नहीं आएगी। अगर वो सोचता रहेगा कुछ क्रिएशन के लिए, तो रजोगुण उसका एक्टिव कर रहा है। सो व्हेन पीपल यूज overdose of सत्वगुण, रजोगुण और तमोगुण, दैट इज द प्रॉब्लम। अगर तीनों गुणों का बैलेंस करेंगे तो फिर वो योगी बन गए। इसलिए बहुत कठोर कठिन प्रयास है ये करना ही पड़ेगा, नहीं तो गलत समय पर हमारे अंदर जागृत हो जाते हैं, अरे मुझे ये करना चाहिए था, वो करना चाहिए था। We meet people at the age of 75 also regretting, अरे तभी करना चाहिए था, किया नहीं, तभी ये करने के लिए बोला, वो करने के लिए, फिर से शरीर मिलेगा। आप अपने आइडिया से शरीर से मुक्त नहीं हो सकते हो, आप केवल एक्सपीरियंस से ही शरीर से मुक्त हो सकते हो। संतुष्टि सोच से नहीं आती है, संतुष्टि तृप्ति के कारण ही आ सकती है। नाउ वी हैव डन इनफ। भगवान अंत में धर्म स्थापन करने के बाद, जब ये तो बहुत सुंदर दृश्य है, हम पढ़ते नहीं उसको, जो मौशल लीला जिसको कहा गया है, जब कृष्ण इज वॉचिंग एंटायर यदुकुल गेटिंग डिस्ट्रॉयड, उनके सारे पुत्र मारे जा रहे, तो फिर भी वहां भगवान निस्पृह होकर, नो ही सीइंग हिज ओन क्रिएशन गेटिंग डिस्ट्रॉयड। लेकिन ये कब हो रहा है? नॉट व्हेन दे आर वेरी यंग। यानी कि यादव कुल कितने सालों तक कंट्रीब्यूट करता रहा, अभी समय आ गया इस बिल्डिंग को गिराने के लिए। तो उस समय उस बिल्डिंग को गिराने में क्लेश नहीं होती है, क्योंकि बिल्डिंग ने काफी कंट्रीब्यूट किया हुआ है। इसलिए नॉर्थ में अगर कोई 80 के ऊपर, आफ्टर 80-85 ईयर्स अगर कोई प्राण छोड़ता है ना, तो सेलिब्रेट करते हैं, क्योंकि इज लिव्ड अ फुल लाइफ। भगवान को गाली नहीं देता, रहे ऐसा कैसे हो गया, मेरे दादाजी को तुमने मार दिया, मेरे बाप को मार दिया। ने बाप को मारा नहीं, बाप संतुष्ट है, दादाजी संतुष्ट है, नानाजी संतुष्ट है। सो दे सेलिब्रेट दैट ही हैज लिव्ड अ कंप्लीट लाइफ। ऐसा नहीं कि आपके पास पैसा भर भर के इसलिए लगाओ उसके पास वेंटिलेटर लगाओ ताकि वो पड़ा रहेगा, पाप कुछ भी कंट्रीब्यूट करने के लिए नहीं। और लोग बोलेंगे कम से कम मेरे पिताजी को मैं देख रहा हूं ना, ये मूर्खता है। नो, गिव हिम अनदर चांस सो दैट ही कैन मूव टू अनदर डेस्टिनेशन, ये शास्त्र है। तो इसलिए सत्व रजो तमो का बैलेंस, not equivalence but appropriate balance according to who you are, and if you try to artificially avoid that, it will hit you hard at the wrong time. That is what Gita teaches us. Arjuna, if he had given up and become a monk, अगर अर्जुन सब छोड़कर भिक्षुक बन जाता था, अपने बर्तन से भिक्षा देने वाले को मारता था अगर वो नहीं देते। अरे विश्वनाथ चक्रवर्ती ने लिखा हुआ है, मैं नहीं बोल रहा हूं, और कृष्ण ने प्रूव किया महाभारत में। इसलिए भगवान क्या कहते हैं, निग्रम किम करिष्यसि अर्जुन, अगर आप अपने कर्तव्य को, अपने अवस्था को छोड़कर दूसरों की अवस्था को प्राप्त करने के लिए प्रयास करोगे, आप प्रकृति के कारण विवश होकर आपको करना ही पड़ेगा। इसलिए यू कैन नॉट बी आर्टिफिशियली फुल ऑफ सत्व गुण, यू कैन नॉट बी आर्टिफिशियली फुल ऑफ रजोगुण, यू कैन नॉट बी आर्टिफिशियली फुल ऑफ तमोगुण। आपको ऐसे जागृत हो गया ना, यू आर आउट ऑफ तमोगुण, एज सिंपल एज दैट। तो अगर ये योग के द्वारा इसको सही अप्रोप्रिएट मेजर में, एक कुक के समान, एक घर की गृहिणी होती है, उसके पास सॉल्ट ज्यादा होता है, शक्कर ज्यादा होता है, तेल ज्यादा होता है, इसका अर्थ नहीं कि वो ज्यादा इसलिए उसको यूज करती है। जब आप पूरी को फ्राई करते हो, पानी को दूर रखते हो उससे, इवन दो उस आटे में पानी का प्रमाण है, there is water in that atta, but only as much as to bring that flour together and allow it to become a puri where oil becomes more prominent। मतलब देखो ना, हर चीज में अप्रोप्रिएट मेजरमेंट है। तेल है, अगर वो तेल गर्म नहीं हो, अगर उसमें अपने आटा डाल दिया, वो पूरी नहीं बनता है, वो खाने के लिए यूजलेस बन जाता है। However, good salt is you can only put that much। इसलिए सत्वगुण कितना भी अच्छा क्यों ना हो, युद्ध करते समय सत्वगुण की सीमा होती है। यही शिवाजी महाराज की महानता है, यही राणा प्रताप जी की महानता है, यही कृष्णदेवराय की महानता है, यही प्रताप रुद्र की महानता है कि उन्होंने रज और ऋषि का सुंदर समन्वय किया। एंड हम लोग सब उनके प्यादे हैं, वी कांट बी लाइक देम। प्रभुपाद जी ने अपना मिशन में, आपको लगता है कि उन्होंने, यस सी द प्रिंसिपल वे से द स्पिरिट इज ट्रांसेंडेंटल, चेतना शुद्ध सत्व की है, लेकिन शास्त्र के अनुसार रजो के बिना कंस्ट्रक्शन होता ही नहीं है। ये मेरे मत नहीं है, ये शास्त्र का मत है। व्हाट इज द डिफरेंस बिटवीन रूप गोस्वामी एंड प्रभुपाद? दोनों दिव्य है, लेकिन एक ने प्योर सत्व का उपयोग करते हुए ब्रज में रह गए, और दूसरे ने शुद्ध सत्व का उपयोग करते हुए रजोगुण को सही प्रकार से उपयोग किया। इफ यू कैन यूज योर कंप्यूटर, if you can use your mobile phone, if you can use your car, you can use your plane, can you not use rajoguna in the service of dharma? With this we will stop. Thank you very much for your kind attention. We'll meet next week. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji. Well explained how to live an integrated life. Shivaji Maharaj on the battlefield used to his war cry was Har Har Mahadev, and we'll be talking about the glories of Lord Shiva as we celebrate Mahashivratri next week. So we meet again on Tuesday next at 7 o'clock on Zoom. Thank you very much, and Hare Krishna.